سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تبارك وتعالى في شان حبيب الكريم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلام عليك سيدي يا رسول الله صلى الله تعالى عليك وسلم. After praising Allah, the most glorified, the most supreme, the controller of all affairs, after sending comes peace, blessings and salutations upon the best of creation, the jewel of mankind, the nur of the universe, the coolest of hearts and eyes, Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I'd like to extend my greetings to those who gathered here today by saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We began with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then we spoke about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then we went to the Shaykhain, Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. And those are the first two khulafa, the first two caliphs of Islam. And the third caliph after him is none other than Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. One special title that's only specific to him. Only Sayyidina Uthman, out of every single human being in existence, only he had this one title, Dhun Nurayn. Dhun Nurayn, the possessor of two lights. The one who had two lights. What does this mean? Why was he given this title? Out of every single human being to ever exist, only Sayyidina Uthman had this title, Dhun Nurayn. This title of Dhun Nurayn was given to him because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, two of his daughters married Sayyidina Uthman. Two of his daughters. We know Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu anhu married Sayyidina Fatima radiyallahu anha, and he only married one daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But Sayyidina Uthman, he had such a rank that he was given two daughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Sayyidina Ali narrates, Sayyidina Ali says that I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say, if I had 40 daughters, some narrations mention 10, others narrations mention 40. If I had 40 daughters, I would give every single one of them to Sayyidina Uthman, one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. This is how Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam saw Sayyidina Uthman, and how much Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu looked after the daughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The first daughter that he married was Sayyidina Ruqayya radiallahu anha. The second daughter was Sayyidina Kulthum radiallahu anha. He married them one after the other. Sayyidina Ruqayya radiallahu anha, she passed away after the Battle of Badr. And Sayyidina Kulthum passed away a few years after that as well. So after Sayyidina Ruqayya passed away, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gave Sayyidina Kulthum to Sayyidina Uthman. He married Sayyidina Uthman, married her, and they lived a few years, and then afterwards Sayyidina Kulthum passed away afterwards. This is what Allah has, the reason why we say Dhun Nurayn, why does it say possessor of two lights? Allah says, Teri nasl paak mein hai, bachcha bachcha noor ka, tu hai ayn noor tera sab gharana noor ka. Allah is saying about the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They say, Teri nasl paak mein hai, bachcha bachcha noor ka. In your offspring, in your sacred and holy offspring, there are children of Noor. There are children of Noor. Tu hai ayn noor tera sab gharana noor ka. That you yourself are an embodiment of Noor. You yourself are Noor, and your whole household is Noor as well. So when Sayyidina Uthman married the two daughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was given this title of Dhun Nurayn, that you are the possessor of two lights. And in the same poem, he also says, Noor ki sarkar se paya do shala noor ka, ho mubarak tumko Dhun Nurayn jora noor ka. The Allah says about Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu, that from the one who is full of Noor, from the one who is full of Noor, you have received two shoals of Noor, you have received two pieces of Noor. Ho Mubarak, and congratulations to you, O Dhun Nurayn. Congratulations to you, O possessor of two lights, because you have received two pairs of Noor. Subhanallah. This is Dhun Nurayn, Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu. And this is how high of a rank he has. Every daughter Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had, two of them, he gave them to Sayyidina Uthman. The first daughter, Sayyidina Zainab, was given to somebody else, and she passed away before the Hijrah, or during the Hijrah. And then Sayyidina Ruqayya and Kulthum, they were given to Sayyidina Uthman, and then Sayyidina Fatima was given to Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu anhu. So Sayyidina Uthman, he was the son-in-law of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was also the nephew of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His mother, the mother of Sayyidina Uthman, was the first cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was the nephew of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was also his son-in-law. And in fact, he's also mentioned that when Sayyidina Ruqayya radiallahu anha passed away, Sayyidina Uthman was he began to cry a lot. He's very, very upset. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him, why are you upset? Sayyidina Uthman said, oh Rasulullah, oh Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the reason why I'm upset is because I've lost my familiar, I've lost a tie to you. One tie that I had, one bond that I had through marriage, I've lost. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him Sayyidah Kulthum radiallahu ta'ala anha. He also had many other titles. He was also Sahibul Hijratain, that he was the one who migrated to Ethiopia. Before the Muslims migrated to Medina to Munawwara, they also migrated to Ethiopia. And this is on the eastern coast of the African continent. And many of the Sahaba actually, they migrated to Ethiopia. And they stayed there for a while before they were called back. So Sayyidina Uthman was one of those who migrated to Ethiopia, and then he migrated to Medina to Munawwara afterwards as well. And Habasha. Yeah, it's called Habasha, now it's called Ethiopia. Back in those it's called Habasha. So he migrated there first, and then he migrated to Medina to Munawwara afterwards. And one final title he had, Jami'ul Quran, the one who collected the Quran and composed it in the book form that we have today. There's one thing I want to mention about this as well. That Jami'ul Quran, he was the one who collected the Quran as we have today. But back then, the Quran that they had, the letters that they had, there was no Fatha Kasra Dhamma, there was no Zabr Zayd Pesh. And for Ba, we got a dot. For Ta, we got 2 dots. Tha, we got 3 dots. Jim, we got 1 dot. There was no dots either. So there was no dots, and there's no Zabr Zayd Pesh. There's no Fatha Dhamma Kasra. This was the Quran that they had, and this was the Quran that they used. Okay? And then after the time of Sayyidina Uthman, during the time of Hajjaj bin Yusuf, he was a corrupt individual, but he also introduced a few things introduced one good thing that we have today. This one good thing that we have is that he saw that Islam was being spread to places where people didn't speak Arabic. Arabic wasn't their native tongue. So for them to read Arabic with no dots, no Zabr, no Zair, no Pesh, it's very difficult for them to read the Quran. So Hajjaj bin Yusuf, he introduced the Zabr Zair Pesh, and he introduced the dots that we have today. This was because of Hajjaj bin Yusuf. Now the reason why I mention this is because there are a lot of people who say, constantly they say bid'ah, this is bid'ah, this is bid'ah. They say something is innovation, right? Constantly this day, they wazifa, bid'ah, bid'ah, bid'ah. They say this constantly, right? They made a wazifa now. And I was in college, about 2 years ago. And on a group chat, somebody said something about something. And they all go on to saying, this is bid'ah, this is bid'ah, this is bid'ah. And then eventually we got into a conversation about bid'ah. And they said that, bid'ah is anything which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not introduce. So then I brought to the topic, the Quran that we have today, this is a bid'ah. Then according to your definition, it is a bid'ah. It is an innovation. And then they said, no. Whatever the Khulafai Rashidun, the Khulafai Rashidin, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Uthman, Sayyidina Ali, whatever they introduced, this is also acceptable. This is also fine. So I said, okay, if that's fine, no problem. But the Quran that you're using today has got Zabr Zayd Pesh. It's got the dots on it. So why do you use that Quran? Because Hajjaj bin Yusuf came many years later. He came many years later. So the dots and the Zabr Zayd Pesh, why do you use that Quran? When this is according to your definition, it's a bid'ah, it's an innovation. And they went silent and said, we shouldn't be talking about this anymore. We need to go talk about something else. And the conversation ended. So they had no response to that. But back to the point that I said, Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, Jami al-Quran, this is one of his other titles. And without him, we would not have the physical form of the Quran that we have today. Now the topic I had today was his khilafat. As we have for the other khulafa, the khilafat of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And we also mentioned for each of the khulafa, the acceptance into Islam. Sayyidina Uthman was one of the first people to accept Islam. After Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, after Sayyidina Ali, and after a few other Sahaba, Sayyidina Uthman was one of the first people to accept Islam. And he accepted it without any hesitation. Once Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq told him, "Oh Uthman, Allah is one. Accept Rasulullah as the messenger of Allah." Instantly Sayyidina Uthman said, "I accept." He accepted the Shahada and became Muslim without any hesitation. He didn't say, "Let me think about it, give me a few days, or I need to do something else." Instantly he said, I accept this. I become Muslim. And when his family found out about this, his family became very angry. They said, oh Uthman, you've left the religion of your forefathers. You have forsaken the religion of your forefathers. How could you do this? And his uncle, Hakam, his uncle grabbed a rope and wrapped Sayyidina Uthman in this rope and he entangled him. He didn't let him move. He wrapped him in this rope and he left him like this. He said to Uthman, oh Uthman, I will only release you once you leave Islam. I'll only release you from this rope after you leave Islam. But Sayyidina Uthman said that I swear by Allah, that Wallahi, I will never abandon my religion and I can never be separated from my religion. You can do whatever you want to me. You can chop me up into small pieces. Chop my body up into small chunks. But still I will never leave Islam. When his uncle heard this, Hakam, when he heard this, he let him go and he released Sayyidina Uthman. So, once you accept Islam, sometimes you feel here and there about Islam. Sometimes you're thinking, for people today, if you were to accept Islam newly, if you were to become a revert, sometimes you may accept Islam and you may fall back into old habits. But Sayyidina Uthman, fresh with Iman, he just accepted Islam. And still, straight away from the get-go, he was so firm in his Iman. He was so strong in his Iman. From the get-go, from the beginning point onwards. That he didn't leave it, even if he was about to die. Even if he was about to be killed, he still didn't leave Islam. And this is the story of most of the Sahaba Kiram. The moment they accepted Islam, they were all being punished. They were all being tortured. Yet they had so much strength, they had so much firmness in their faith, that they never left Islam. They stayed firm upon Islam, and they continued to say these statements were the norm. You can do whatever you want to me, but Islam will never leave my heart. We know the story of Sayyidah Fatima bint al-Khattab, the sister of Sayyidina Umar. She said something similar as well. That she said, you can extract every single drop of blood from my body, yet Islam will never leave my heart. So these were the Sahaba Kiram. This is how strong they were in the Iman. Yet today, we are born and bred with Iman. Our families are Muslims, our parents were Muslims, our friends are Muslims. Yet even in such a situation, following upon Iman is very difficult. Acting upon Islam becomes very difficult. Even though we are surrounded by Muslims, our friends are Muslims, our communities, a lot of people in our community as Muslims. Yet to act upon Islam is very difficult. Statements like these will be very difficult for us to say. We might be able to say by the tongue, very easy to say by the tongue, but to act upon statements like these, very difficult for us to do so. When the Sahaba say something like this, they mean it from the bottom of their hearts. Now Sayyidina Uthman, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was so generous. You know the title he's given Al-Ghani. He's given Sayyidina Uthman al-Ghani. He's given this title as well. And one of the reasons being so is he was very, very generous. Whenever Rasulullah asked for something, he would give it. He'd give his word for Islam. On the Battle of Tabuk, which was an expedition that took place, and the Sahaba Ikram, they went to the coast of Arabia, and they were having an expedition over there. Rasulullah told the companions, and they were in Madinah Munawwara. He told the companions that, oh companions, oh Sahaba, those who have gone for Tabuk, those who have gone for the expedition, they don't have enough resources. They are lacking in resources. They don't have enough food. They don't have enough equipment. It's mentioned that there was such a lack of food that the Sahaba begin to eat branches. They take branches of the trees and they begin to eat these branches. That's how much of a lack of food there was. There's barely any food for the Sahaba. And so Rasulullah he asked the companions for help. He said that we need provisions to provide for our army. And Sayyidina Uthman, when he heard this, he said, Labbaik. And he said, I give 100 camels. 100 camels, and then fully equipped with the materials and food to give for the Battle of Tabuk. 100 camels. Imagine somebody today donating 100 cars. Firstly, people have 1 or 2 cars. Nobody's even got 100 cars. And for somebody to even donate even 1 car is one big thing. For somebody to donate 100 cars, that's an even bigger thing. But Sayyidina Uthman, without even thinking for a moment, 100 camels in the name of Islam. 100 camels for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Later on in the same expedition, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the same announcement that we need more provisions. They are lacking provisions again. And then Sayyidina Uthman said 200 camels. Now I give 200 camels for Islam. And he gave 200 fully equipped with food, with water, with equipment, with armory, with swords and shields, whatever they needed, he fully equipped. Gave that for Islam, 200 camels. And another time the same explanation happened, the same exclamation happened, and we need more. And then Uthman said 300 camels. And the Mufassirun, they say, they got to the point where he donated 1,000 camels just for Islam. 1,000 camels. Just for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the expedition. 1,000 camels. This is one point in his life. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about this moment, that if Sayyidina Uthman was to never perform any nafil action again, if he was to never perform any nawafil again, this one action that he did of donating over 1,000 camels for Islam, this is enough for him. Meaning, if for the rest of his life, Sayyidina Uthman did not perform any nawafil, he didn't perform any rakat of nafil, then that would be fine for him. Because this action that he performed of giving 1,000 camels, that is sufficient. His rank is already high enough now. He doesn't need to do any more. This is what Rasulullah said about Sayyidina Uthman and his donation. And he also gave him glad tidings of Jannah as well. That Sayyidina Uthman is a dweller of paradise. He's one of the Ashra Mubashara, one of those who are given glad tidings of paradise. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Another moment in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he took Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Uthman, and they went to the mountain Uhud. And they stood on the top of the mountain Uhud, and the mountain began to shake. The mountain began to tremble. And Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had his staff in his hand. He stamped his staff on the ground, and he said, "Oh Uhud, oh mountain Uhud, stay firm, stabilize, because upon you is only a prophet, a Siddiq, and 2 martyrs." A prophet, a Siddiq, and 2 martyrs. Now you can only be a martyr once you've been killed. Once you've been killed in the path of Allah. But Sayyidina Uthman and Sayyidina Umar, they are both alive over there. They are both with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was giving glad tidings. Firstly, he shows ilm al-ghayb, shows knowledge of the unseen. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew what was going to happen. And it also shows that Sayyidina Uthman and Sayyidina Uthman were about to be martyred in their lifetime. They're going to be martyred in their life. And Sayyidina Uthman, from this point onwards, he knew and he accepted that I am going to die as a martyr. He knew from this point. And during his khilafat, near the end of his khilafat, which we're going to discuss soon, end of his khilafat, he was waiting for this moment. He knew that it was about to happen, and he was waiting for that special moment. During the time of Sayyidina Uthman, now we go to his khilafah. During the time of his khilafah, when he first stood in the minbar, when the first khutbah is about to be given, he stood, and that minbar had 3 steps. Okay, this minbar's got 3 steps as well. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would sit on the first. Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq during his time would sit on the second, and Sayyidina Umar would stand on the third. Okay, so those 3 steps. The reason being was for respecting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Rasulullah stood on the first, so Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, out of respect, he stood on the second. And Sayyidina Umar, out of respect for the first 2, he stood on the third. This was their respect. Now Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, there's only 3 steps. And now Sayyidina Uthman was the 4th to come. Meaning after Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, and after Sayyidina Umar, he was the 4th. So he thought, how should I do this now? If I stand on the, so what he did, he stood on the first, stood on the top step. Now after his khutbah, the Sahaba Kiram and the other companions, they asked, "Oh Uthman, why did you sit on the first step?" And Sayyidina Uthman, he replied by saying, if I was to sit on the second step, then people will think I am equal to Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. But I'm not equal to him. I'm lower than him. And then he said, if I was to sit on the third step, then people will think I'm equal to Sayyidina Umar. But I'm not equal to him either. I'm lower than him as well. This is why I stood in the top seat, because nobody would ever dare to think that I'm equal to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is why I stood in the third seat. So this was his respect for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was his respect for Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq and Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhuma. And he also acknowledged that they were greater than him. So you know, this is the khilaf, this is the order that we have. The most superior is Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, and then Sayyidina Umar, and then we have Sayyidina Uthman, and then Sayyidina Ali. And Sayyidina Uthman himself admits this. Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq and Sayyidina Umar are greater than me. And Sayyidina Ali admits this many times as well in his lifetime. But this was his respect for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his respect for Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, and his respect for Sayyidina Umar. Now let's move to his khilafah, inshallah. The final few, so his khilafah, people were very happy with him. People enjoyed his khilafah because compared to Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, you know, the time of Sayyidina Umar, he was very, you know, people would call him strict, people would call him harsh. And this was sort of his nature, he's very, Jalali, Sayyidina Umar. Whereas Sayyidina Uthman, radiallahu anhu, he was more soft-hearted. He was more, he wasn't lenient. He was still firm upon Quran and Sunnah. But he was more soft-hearted towards the people. The people liked him more in this sense. So, Sayyidina Uthman, radiallahu anhu, is very accepted amongst the people. They loved his khilafah. And his khilafah was about 12 years. So longer than Sayyidina Umar, radiallahu anhu, about 12 years long. The problems began to come in when he appointed an individual by the name of Abdullah. He appointed him as the governor of Egypt. And the people of Egypt had many complaints about him. Whenever the people of Egypt used to come back to Leyton Muharram for a complaint, Abdullah, the governor of Egypt, he would kill them before they got to Medina. Or he would get rid of them before they came to Medina. So the people didn't like him. They had a lot of accusation against him. People say he was a murderer. He had committed murder. So there was a lot of complaints about him. And then eventually, a group of about 700 Egyptians came from Egypt to Medina Munawwara. And they brought this complaint to Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu. Now Sayyidina Uthman, firstly, he ignored the complaints. He thought he didn't want to cause more problems. He thought that perhaps these people may be wrong about what they're saying. He made a few assumptions before. And then Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha, she wrote to Sayyidina Uthman. And she said to Sayyidina Uthman, "Oh Uthman, this is their complaint, you should accept their complaint." And after a bit of thinking, Sayyidina Uthman said to the people, "Okay, if I am to replace Abdullah, give me something to put in his place. Give me something to replace him with." So the people, they suggested a man by the name of Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. So the son of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, radiallahu anhu, Muhammad. And so he accepted this. He sent Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, Muhammad, up to Egypt. He went with 700 Egyptians, and he went with a few of the Sahaba as well. The senior Sahaba, he went with them. And they got towards Egypt, but before they entered Egypt, they saw a person on a camel who's riding very fast into Egypt. And they noticed that this person was, he was a slave, he was a servant. And they noticed that this servant was either coming very fast either to give a message, or he was a slave that was running away from his master. So they caught this person and asked him, "Are you a servant? Are you a slave? Or are you trying to give a message? Are you a messenger?" And then some people from the group, they recognized that he was the servant of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, and he was carrying a message. And so Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, he took the letter and he began to read the letter. And he saw in this letter that it says, and he was stabbed by Sayyidina Uthman. Okay? And the letter says, and this letter was directed towards Abdullah, the governor of Egypt. And it says, "When Muhammad and his group come to you, find an excuse to kill them. And thereafter, reject their invitation, say that it is invalid, and remain in your post until I give you my opinion." This was the letter stamped by Sayyidina Uthman and was given to this servant of Sayyidina Uthman to give to Abdullah. Now when the Sahaba and when Muhammad saw this, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, when he saw this, they became very angry, they became very enraged. And so they went back towards Medina Munawwara. And when they reached Medina Munawwara, they called some of the senior Sahaba Kiram. They called Sayyidina Ali, Sayyidina Talha, Sayyidina Sa'ad, Sayyidina Zubair, radiallahu anhum. The senior Sahaba, those who had lived with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they called them. And they showed them the letter. They showed them the stamp of Sayyidina Uthman. And Sayyidina Ali, he saw this, and he knew that there was something wrong. Something wasn't right here. So he took the letter and he went to Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu. And he said to Sayyidina Uthman, "Oh Uthman," he took the slave, he took the camel, and he went to Sayyidina Uthman. And he asked Sayyidina Uthman, "Oh Uthman, is this your slave?" He said, "Yes, this is my slave." And he said, "Is this your she camel? Is this your camel?" He said, "Yes, this is my camel." And then he brought the letter. And he said, "Oh Uthman, is this your letter?" Sayyidina Uthman, he read the letter. And he said, "I have never seen this letter before in my life. I've never seen this letter before in my life." And then Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, he asked, "Where is this letter from then? Who has it come from?" And some of the people that were there, they said, "We recognize the writing. The handwriting here is not of Sayyidina Uthman, but it belongs to Marwan." Belongs to Marwan, another person that was there. Some of you may know who he is, but we'll come to him in the next few days, inshallah. But it belongs to Marwan. Now, Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, he was told, give Marwan and put him in the courts now. Because now he is called for the killing of 700 people, so he should be tested by the courts. But Sayyidina Uthman said that we cannot test him, or we cannot judge him, because handwriting or a letter is no assumption to base something on. Because people's handwritings can be similar. Marwan might not have written this. And Sayyidina Uthman, he wanted to avoid bloodshed. He wanted to avoid any killing whatsoever. He wanted to keep peace, especially in the city of Medina Munawwara. He wanted to keep peace. So he prevented the people from taking Marwan, and he allowed the people to, told the people to go away basically. After a few days went by, and eventually the situation got to a point where there were now riots taking place. Okay, there's a rebellion taking place. And what Sayyidina Ali noticed was that there's no food, no water going into the house of Sayyidina Uthman. And Sayyidina Uthman, he looked out of his house and he asked the people, is Sayyidina Ali amongst you? And they replied, no, he's not amongst us. So he asked some of his companions, some of his household, to go and get Sayyidina Ali. And Sayyidina Ali came and he saw the situation, and he saw that the people were planning to assassinate Sayyidina Uthman. So Sayyidina Ali, what he did, he told Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein radiallahu anhuma to guard the household. To guard the household of Sayyidina Uthman. And I've shortened down the story too. There's a lot more details, but I've shortened down the story a lot. So he told Imam Hussein and Imam Hassan to guard the household of Sayyidina Uthman. And then eventually what happened was he placed guards on his roof as well. There were some Sahaba that were guarding the roof of Sayyidina Uthman. Now Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, the son of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, he gathered two companions, and they, in the night, they decided today is the night that we're going to murder Sayyidina Uthman. Because he has not given us Marwan, he has not given us justice for what was about to take place, he's not given us any answers, so we will murder him tonight. And at this point, he had no food and he's had no water for many days. Okay? We know Sayyidina Imam Hussein radiallahu anhu, he was also deprived of water in the battlefield. But Sayyidina Uthman, he was deprived of water in his own home, in his own city. As Amir al-Mu'mineen, in his own city, he is deprived of water and food. This is also a plight. Many people become emotional when they hear the story of Sayyidina Hussein when he was deprived of water and food. Yet, very few people become emotional when Sayyidina Uthman was deprived of food and water as well. Yet in reality, Sayyidina Uthman was deprived of food and water in his own home, in his own household, by his own servants, by his own people as well. His people, his subjects, as Amir al-Mu'mineen, they deprived him of his food and water. So Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, he was in his ground floor. On the roof, there were a few Sahaba guarding the roof to ensure that nobody would come inside. And Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, he grabbed two of his friends and they looked at the house of Sayyidina Uthman. They noticed that we can't come in through the roof because there's people guarding there. And we can't come in through the entrance because Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein are there. So what should we do now? And they looked around and they began to survey the area. And they noticed that the house next door was the house of an Ansari companion, one of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they went into this house, and through this house they jumped into the house of Sayyidina Uthman. And they came face to face with the wife of Sayyidina Uthman. And they slapped, or they hit the wife of Sayyidina Uthman to the extent that she began to bleed from her nose. And Sayyidina Uthman, he saw this and he made dua, he cursed the individual. He said, may Allah remove you your hands and your feet, may He make you blind, and may He enter you to Jahannam. This was the dua that Sayyidina Uthman made about the person that hit the wife of Sayyidina Uthman. The narration mentioned that later on, this individual, he was left with no hands, he was left with no feet, he became blind. And he said to the people, this is the curse that Sayyidina Uthman put upon me, and I'm only waiting for the final part, which is that I will be sent into Jahannam. And he knew that it was coming for him. But Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, after seeing what happened to his wife, Sayyidina Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, the son of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, he grabbed Sayyidina Uthman by the beard. And Sayyidina Uthman said to him, oh Uthman, oh Muhammad, what would your father say in this situation? What would Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu say in this situation? And after hearing this, Muhammad let go. And he was ashamed. He was about to call off the attack when his two companions came to the room and they martyred Sayyidina Uthman. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. At this point, he was martyred and there was blood that came from his body and he spit upon the Quran. He spit upon the Quran that he was reading. And then later on what happened, the Sahaba came from upstairs, they heard the commotion, they came down and they saw what had happened and they were in a state of shock. Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, they came inside as well, they were also shocked. And Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, when he heard about this, he became so angry. He became angry to the extent that he brought Imam Hussein and Imam Hassan and he slapped them both. He slapped Sayyidina Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein because he became so angry. He was saying, how could you two, in front of the house of Sayyidina Uthman, allow this to happen? This was how angry Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu was. And then later on, the janazah took place. He was buried in Jannah al-Baqi. And it's mentioned, the Sahaba mentioned, that when we were leading the janazah, we made it take place during the night. We didn't want to cause more problems. The situation was already very fragile. The situation was already very, very, about to explode at any point. So they did it during the night, and they saw that there's only a few Sahaba that performed the janazah. And they heard the hooves of horses. They were very loud, and many horses came. The Sahaba, they were very fearful now. They said, okay, we're about to be slaughtered as well. And these people, a voice came from them saying, we are only here to read the janazah of Sayyidina Uthman. And then they realized that these people that came, they were the Farisha, they were the Malaika, they were the angels. Many angels were sent only to recite the janazah of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu. This is how great of a rank he had, that even the angels came to recite and came to pray the janazah of Sayyidina Uthman. And then obviously Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu was elected caliph, and inshallah tomorrow we'll go through his khilafat. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to act more as we said today. May He forgive any mistakes that I have made. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also stay firm on Quran and Sunnah. وَمَا عَلِمْنَا مِنَ الْبَلَاغِ الْمُبِينِ وَالْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. جزاكم الله خير.